Joe introduced me to a model a long time ago. I don't know where it originally came from, but when you had said this thing of being in that meeting and maybe using some language and you wish you did something else, I think that's honestly the first step. Is the model he shared with me was we are unconsciously incompetent. We don't know that we're not doing the right thing. Then we become consciously incompetent. And that's really awful. It just feels terrible because it's always oh, I should have, or I wish I'd done that differently. And then we become consciously competent because the next time you go into a meeting, you will bite your tongue when you want to say guys, or you will actively practice saying, hey, everyone. And then you're going to become unconsciously competent and you won't even be thinking twice about it. You'll have embedded and ingrained those new behaviors and it will feel more natural to you. But we have to go through that really awful, like Heather said, this learning curve of discomfort to be able to get together. And I think a lot of us stop at, that's just too much of a burden.
Yeah.
That I don't want to feel uncomfortable. You know what? They're just overly sensitive about that particular phrase or saying or situation.
And granted, we're probably a little biased because this is the space that we play in as executive coaches in professional development, training and development. But I remember a scenario. I was an executive and coaching engagement with an EVP in entertainment, as a matter of fact. And one of the things we talked about is he was a very seasoned individual. I would probably guess roughly in his early 60s. And he would refer to females in the department as girls. You know, they're very, very smart girls. I've got a team of great girls. And yeah, so your facial expressions, right? I mean, today we sit back and go, that just feels icky. Well, okay, so that's good. It means that we have now come to a place of learning where we realize that probably isn't the best way to share it.
Right.
To say that. Granted, this was back in, I'm going to guess roughly the late 90s or so. Not that it was better then, but at minimum might have been a little bit more accepted. So he and I start the conversation. He's unconsciously incompetent, as Gerri says at that point. Well, then I share with him the feedback. When you say girls, this is the implication. This is the connotation around it. Here's the part that I find absolutely fascinating is 99.9% of the time, when you give feedback to people with grace and civility, they come back and they are so, I did not even realize that's the way it was coming across.
99.9% of the time, when you act like a human being to another human being, you get a fireworks show of amazing outcomes, no matter what. And like
I want to throw in there, you're right to a certain extent, and something that I think we all have to be thoughtful of is that there are people who have been experiencing these paper cuts or just stab wounds on a regular basis. And so sometimes you might give this feedback, or you might be saying, you know, hey, I'm being civil with you. Why aren't you being civil with me? I saw a lot of that commentary when we saw the outpour of rage coming out after George Floyd. And it's like, whoa, well, if you just did this or you just did that. And the reality is that the group of people who have not been disenfranchised, the group that has been the recipient of these things, you can't expect them to just show up and, like, you know, cut their food neatly and go, hey, I'm so glad I'm finally invited to the dinner table. There is a level of rage. And I think even if you're not the person who inflicted it, how do you show up with the grace and space for someone to struggle with, okay, I'm finally invited here, but I am pissed that it took this long. I am angry that I used to have to break in to even get here and that I had to march to do it. That there is a level that we have to have some space that, look, we should have done this a long time ago. They should have been at the dinner table all along. And if we've been sitting here eating and saying it hasn't been our problem, or thinking, well, that sucks, I hope they get a dinner table soon, there has to be some room for us to take some of that heat, even if we're not the ones who kept them from the dinner table.
Yeah, compassion.
Yeah.
Long way. Especially because everyone has a story. And if you're too busy in your amazing life to hold space, to figure out where someone's coming from, I don't know about you, but I don't care what you look like, sound like, or where you were born. I don't want to have anything to do with you if that's the way you're going to go, you know, because I don't want to be on that receiving end ever either. So it does go both ways when you break the habits. Gerri, can you repeat those 5 things again? It's the
It's the 4. So you're unconsciously incompetent. So you're doing things or saying things you don't realize are even wrong. Then you become consciously incompetent, the most painful space to be. You know you're doing it wrong. Consciously competent, because you're putting a lot of effort into shifting whatever the behavior is. And then you've done it so much, you become unconsciously competent. It's happening as second nature, the new better behavior.
I think that's my favorite part of this chat so far. It really, like, I think every single person has a category, and maybe the journey was all 4, and maybe just 2 out of the 4. And that's why we're showing up to learn.
That's why she's the gentle ninja.
Yeah. And that's why we're probably falling in different levels, even in the same space. So, you might have got your head completely wrapped around, or because of where you were raised, this is one area I am lock solid. I am unconsciously competent in this space because that's where I had lived for so long. And yet then I turn around and totally misgender somebody because that takes different kind of work. And I've never had to worry about that to the same degree or have as much practice in a daily way. So now I'm consciously incompetent there. So I think that forgiveness, we talk about grace and civility, give it to ourselves as well. That, you mentioned something about recovering from that. And I think that's what happens if we catch ourselves doing it unconsciously or now consciously incompetent. Just stop and take the breath, because I guarantee you, to Heather's point, somebody who's been starving off to the side, just waiting to get at the table, if somebody was to go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I didn't have a chair for you. Yeah. Let me fix that. At least it's this recognition of, I see you, I hear you. I may grab a chair that, you prefer a different one, but I'm going to at least be trying.